The start of the regular season is creeping closer and closer. So we're continuing our Oilers Nation off-season countdown, taking a look at the 10 biggest storylines we'll be watching heading into next year for the Edmonton Oilers. And it's all brought to you by our friends at Sherwood Ford the Giant. Today's big question: what will be the team's biggest need at the trade deadline? It was a relatively quiet offseason for the Oilers. Yes, they brought in Connor Brown and a couple of small pieces at the bottom of the lineup, but largely this is the same group that lost in 6 games to the Vegas Golden Knights in the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Remember back to last year, though, they made a big addition at the deadline, adding Matthias Ekholm. They also picked up pieces like Nick Bukestad. What could that big piece be this year, though? Right now, I'll be honest, it's kind of hard to tell because I think the thing that will impact this the most is injuries. If the Oilers were to sustain a big injury to their top six or a big injury in the top four on the blue line, then all of a sudden that quickly becomes their biggest need. What it would also do is potentially give them some LTIR space to play with. The Oilers are not operating in LTIR right now. That could make adding a piece at the deadline very easy. But if someone were to go down and their cap hit was 5, 6, even $4 million, that right there could allow the Oilers to make a big move at the deadline. They have their first rounder in this year's draft. They have some assets that they could use, but what could they use it on? I think a lot of people right now look at this team and say, hey, if this is the roster and it's fully healthy at the deadline, the biggest need is a right shot D-man. And I actually tend to agree with that. I think if there's a move out there that would allow you to move your first round pick and Cody Cece's cap space, and you could go get this year's version of Matthias Ekholm, a right shot version of Matthias Ekholm, all of a sudden, I think this blue line is starting to look like a Stanley Cup caliber blue line. On the other hand, Connor Brown's coming into this top six. He's replacing Kyler Yamamoto, but last year, the depth in the playoffs really fell off for the Oilers. There's probably a case to be made that they could use some upgrade on the wings still. This could depend on how Dylan Holloway, Raphael Lavoie, and even Connor Brown look for the Oilers next season. Maybe even a guy like Warren Fogle comes and has a career year, contract year, Warren Fogle. But there is something to be said about maybe getting a right winger, maybe with some term. Someone like Travis Konechny could potentially be available at the deadline. If we're talking about dream candidates, I also look on the blue line and think about a guy like Jared Spurgeon in Minnesota. If the Wild were to fall out of it, similar to the way Nashville did last season, but that's probably a pipe dream at this point. We don't know who's available. We don't know for sure what the Oilers' needs will be. My prediction, the Oilers get an Ekholm level right shot D-man at the deadline. But I want to hear yours. Drop it in the comment. Hit us with it on Twitter. And don't forget, subscribe to the channel because we have a ton of new content coming next year.